Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. David Eby is doing it again. He's getting in the way of Canadians actually making some real money and letting privatized companies get in and create a pipeline going through Alberta to the BC coastline. So we got Vashi having an interview with him right now, and she just stumps him because he tries to push his narrative over the Canadian people. So let's take a look.
Welcome back to Power Play, and our top story today, a potential pipeline that could go from Alberta to BC's north coast. Alberta and the feds are working on a memorandum of understanding that we have been told by multiple sources could be imminent, and sources also tell us it could include support for a new pipeline that will require an exemption under the tanker ban that applies to that north coast. BC's Premier David Eby is with us live right now to talk about that. Hi, Premier. Pleasure to see you as always. Thank you very much for making the time.
Hey, Vashi, thanks for having me.
So I read your statement this afternoon that said that you were caught off guard by the fact this was happening. And I'm just wondering how that's the case, given the possibility of a memorandum of understanding. The existence of these negotiations has been out in the public sphere now for the better part of a month. Have you not asked anyone in the federal government where things are at?
Yeah, well, I'm certainly aware that Premier Smith has been pushing hard for her project to be listed, as she described it, on the major project list by Grey Cup weekend. It obviously was not. There certainly was not discussion about a meeting between Saskatchewan, Alberta, and the federal government negotiating the terms by which a project will be delivered in British Columbia without British Columbia at the table. So that was the certainly surprising news that came to me and headlined the Globe and Mail. I think it was surprising to many people in Canada. It was certainly an unpleasant surprise for the coastal First Nations, who the foundation of their support for about 10,000 jobs, the largest private sector investment in Canadian history. LNG Canada is premised on the existence of the tanker ban. And so all of us were thoroughly both disappointed and, yes, caught off guard.
Have you had any communication or conversation with the Prime Minister about the tanker ban?
Yes, I've outlined for the Prime Minister, senior ministers, backbenchers, the Canadian public, the British Columbia public, anyone who will listen, that the oil tanker ban in British Columbia off the Canadian north coast is the condition precedent, it is the requirement, it is the foundational building block for coastal First Nations support for projects that are worth in the neighborhood of $100 billion. Salism's LNG, LNG Canada Phase 2, massive expansions to the Port of Prince Rupert, projects that are the reason why British Columbia has 4 times more major projects on Canada's list than any other province in the country. And I have explained again and again that for these projects to be successful, for them to be able to go ahead, we need the support of coastal First Nations. It is fragile. They are not enthusiastic about these projects, but they're willing to tolerate them in exchange for protecting the coast from a heavy oil spill. And that coast for them represents a $1.7 billion economy, including fishing and tourism opportunities, all of which are gone in an instant with the heavy oil spill. And right now, as we speak, a barge with freight on it is sinking off the coast of Bella Bella and is being towed away. These accidents are not a figment of coastal First Nations imagination. There was a huge diesel spill there. One heavy oil spill, it can't be cleaned up. It is existential for them.
And I certainly do understand that, but I have never heard the Prime Minister or anyone in the federal government say that they are going to get rid of that tanker ban writ large. At this point, what is being reported is the potential for a carve-out should a pipeline that we don't even know the details of at some point go ahead. And when it comes to the LNG projects that you mentioned, the first 2 that you said, if I recall, are the first 2, it was the first project on the first major projects list and the first project on the second major projects list that just came out last week. So there's a ton of buy-in and support from the federal government for those resource projects in your province. Why are you, I guess, staking out the position you have right now when they have never said that they're going to do things to put those projects in jeopardy? In fact, they've put their support behind them.
Okay, well, first of all, you and I are speculating about the contents of the MOU, and I understand why you might be speculating or a member of the media. They haven't announced it yet. But I don't understand why I'm speculating about an MOU negotiated with Saskatchewan and Alberta about British Columbia and what the content of it might be. But the idea that the Hecate Strait, which is one of the most dangerous and most treacherous areas for ships to pass through, that somehow Danielle Smith and Scott Moe know better than literally generations of politicians from all parties that have observed through practice and then recently through legislation a ban on oil tankers off this coast simply because it is so dangerous and so precarious, that Danielle Smith and Scott Moe know better. They feel to me like two tourists wearing sandals wandering off into the woods in the North Shore of Vancouver saying, don't worry about us, we'll be fine. They don't know what they're talking about. And not only that, there's not a real project here. And the threat to the projects that I told you about, those 10,000 plus jobs, the largest private sector investment in Canadian history that is reaching final investment decision, the threat to those projects is the coastal First Nations saying, if you lift the tanker ban, we will no longer support these projects. We don't even like them in the first place, and the only reason we're tolerating them is because of the tanker ban. And I don't know that anyone appears to get this from Alberta or Saskatchewan, or disappointingly, the PMO, if in fact these conversations are happening in the total absence of the coastal First Nations. They haven't been included either.
Now, what they're upset about, the First Nations, is that the pipeline is probably going to be built by an American company. That's what they don't want to happen, because it's being funded by the same same person who funded Epstein, who funded Trump's campaign and other things like that. And that's what they're upset about. If you go down and you actually look at the interview with them, they lay that all out. That's why they're upset about it.
But they've done with the place. I know.
So last week, I went to the Prime Minister's big LNG announcement in Terrace, BC, and the whole thing was very strange. The Liberals are trying to fast-track a project financed by the guy who bankrolled Jeffrey Epstein and the guy who funded Trump's election campaign, seen here with Ghislaine Maxwell. So this American-owned gas terminal would be built in Korea and then floated over to a property owned by the Nisga'a Nation. But the investors haven't actually greenlit the Ksi Lissom's project because they're waiting for subsidies from the Canadian government, which they can get if Carney's Major Projects Office decides this is a project in the national interest. Here's my question to the Prime Minister.
So how much taxpayer money are we prepared to invest in a project that is American-owned and foreign built?
There are different aspects of the project, as I said. There is the PRGT pipeline, which is necessary, which is Canadian-owned First Nation. Sorry, can I finish?
At this point, I was just shaking my head because all of the investors in the pipeline so far are American. The company selected to build it is American, and the company that owns it in this mysterious partnership with the Nisga'a is American. That's why people who live on the pipeline route showed up to Carney's announcement to say no American pipeline. Here's his answer about how much Canadians are going to pay.
There are structures that come with projects that ensure that there's returns to taxpayers through the tax system as well. And the structure of the financing is a decision that we take with the full information of the project design. So that's part of. We answer that question with full information by doing the work, and that's what the referral to the Major Project Office facilitates.
Absolute word salad. Carney got back into his car and zoomed off to the airport, right past Indigenous leaders who've been trying to warn him about this pipeline, but were barred from the event by police.
This is all going to be owned by billionaires in the United States.
Whose bank account is it going into? I know who's it coming out of. That's Canadian public money.
Even if this one nation wants it, that doesn't stop the impacts that they're bringing from harming everyone else around them.
These folks are my friends and neighbors, and they're also my heroes, because it's incredibly brave to speak out publicly against this thing when that makes you a threat to national security. Luckily, people are starting to figure out what these politicians are doing.
Now he's selling off BC to billionaires, American billionaires.
The backlash from Canadians is building, and opposition members are pouncing on the foreign ownership.
These men are disgusting. Was that for Epstein? It's foul.
The Liberals and NDP are starting to realize they've made a huge mistake.
I totally take the point that you're making around not being at the table. And I can see how the way in which this is reported and the involvement of British Columbia without you not being there would be egregious to you. If I put that, and I get it, I'm not trying to counter that in any way. But if I put that aside for a second and I listen very closely to what Alberta's premier has said about this, she isn't saying, who cares about those First Nations. She isn't saying who cares about BC's LNG projects. What I have mostly heard her say is, we hope that BC can exploit those natural resources to the benefit of British Columbians and Canadians. We just want the potential ability to do the same thing should the opportunity be viable. And we have not had, in her view, as I hear it, a federal government that even in principle was supportive of that. That isn't exactly the way that you're characterizing it. And I wonder why, you know, the two of you, for example, cannot engage in a conversation at such a critical time for this country to find some kind of middle ground.
Yeah, I guess, you know, you would do a great job writing speeches for Danielle Smith if she put it that way, but that's not what she's saying. She is saying that there are 9 bad laws or something like that in Canada, and that if they continue to exist, that they mean that Canada is broken and it is not functioning. And one of those bad laws is the oil tanker ban off of the coast of British Columbia. And she wants that ban removed. She wants that law rescinded without a single company, not even one. She hasn't even got one company that's willing to come forward and say, hey, Alberta is willing to underwrite this thing. The federal government's here. They got a bunch of money for us. You know, they're gonna help us. If they're able to do these things, we would love to build that pipeline. And the reason there is no pipeline company willing to come forward and say this is because they don't want to build it. It's going to cost $50 billion plus. We already have a publicly owned pipeline that costs $30 billion to taxpayers. It's not even fully being used, and we're not being obstructionist about this. In fact, we are spending some political capital here in British Columbia to say, look, we get it, Alberta. You want more access to Tidewater. Let's figure out how we expand the capacity at the TMX pipeline, a pipeline that we fought tooth and nail and was imposed on us by Ottawa. But let's sit down at the table and figure out a path forward. But instead of that, all we get is a $20 million PR exercise from a premier who's in political trouble, trying to remove an oil tanker ban off the coast of our province that is the foundation for more than 10,000 jobs and billions of dollars in economic activity for our province and for the entire country. And so that's the frustration that I have, and it will continue to be, and I'll continue to advocate on this because real project should always trump made-up project.
This guy's just like ridiculous. He he needs to be thrown out of office. He doesn't have Canadian like values in mind whatsoever. We are literally crumbling at the seams here, and we need these pipelines. Like every single like prosperous country in the world like has pipelines, has some sort of affiliate with some sort of like liquid gas or like propane or whatever, like LNG, and that's just what runs the world right now. Everything's made out of like oil, as an example. And just by gaslighting Canadians saying there's no proponent, there's no projects, there's no need for this is ridiculous. Get rid of this freaking like twit, man. Like it's so sickening that he's still around. Just like he's the guy's so freaking tall that like he literally is probably losing air, being so like his head is so high up in the clouds up there.
But when she talks about the tanker ban, with due respect, Premier, she is reflecting what those potential pipeline proponents have said, which is that if there is to be a pipeline, an additional pipeline beyond TMX, that tanker ban, in the case of that pipeline, essentially renders it null and void. I understand your point that it puts your projects in jeopardy, but so far those projects are going ahead. They are on the major projects list. Why is it okay for your province to profit from its natural resources and not for Alberta?
You know, I think, I mean, Vashi, with respect to the question, the idea that Alberta has been frustrated in realizing access to market is bizarre. $30 billion in taxpayer dollars went to building the first pipeline that is now publicly owned, that's not even at full capacity and could be significantly expanded. And that's not enough for...
The pipeline's at 75% capacity right now, and it's not going to take very long before they even get the next pipeline built for it to be at full capacity. So it's just, again, like just falsifying any information you can possibly get to prove his narrative.
Alberta. You know, Alberta also wants billions of dollars for the Pathways plan project that's going to reduce carbon emissions. And why not $50 billion more for a second taxpayer-owned pipeline, because there is no private company that is willing to do that. And the entitlement, the belief that only Alberta should have access to that kind of money from the federal government and that kind of support and that kind of hand-holding. It is an entitlement that cannot continue.
Look at Vashti's face right now. Like, she's trying to hold it together, but she's ticked off. She's going to, like, nail him hard in a second. And this is what it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Alberta, just like every other province and territory in this country, we all have to work together. For our part in BC, that includes sucking it up and having a hard conversation about the TMX pipeline that's already publicly owned, that we fought tooth and nail, but we're willing to sit at the table with Alberta about. But the idea that BC has to take our private sector projects and put them at risk for nothing from Alberta. They have no project, no proponent, no route, no permits, no nothing. And we have to put all of our hard work that has been done over years with coastal First Nations and communities along the line, bringing people together to deliver this thing. And Danielle Smith can have a $20 million communications project in her province, and that somehow is more important than the actual projects that we worked years to deliver. Like, there just comes a time when we have to say enough is enough. Like, we don't ask for Danielle's support or her assistance in these projects, or her province's support or assistance in these all we ask is that they stay out of the way. Let us deliver these projects for the country. There's a reason why we have 4 times more projects than other provinces on the board, because we have been pushing hard and working hard with communities to deliver these projects. And there is already a fully taxpayer-funded and owned pipeline that Alberta is not using to capacity. Why don't you give us a call once that pipeline's being used?
But the difference is geography, right? Like, your province is the coast. And that necessitates, if you are trying to export resources, involvement of British Columbia. And when you say, why is, you're intimating that essentially Alberta wants too much, that they are entitled by asking for additional pipeline export capacity. Would you be okay with just one LNG project, Premier? If someone said, no, you should just stop at LNG 1?
I'm trying to.
She got him. Look at his face. Like, his shoulders are slumping now. Like, he's completely changed his tone, because now the wheels are turned around on him, and you know that he's just going to try to avoid answering this question.
Imagine a scenario where British Columbia and the federal government are having private meetings about Alberta and Saskatchewan in the absence of those provinces. I'm trying to imagine what the reaction would be. I understand the need to have conversations. I understand the need for Premier Smith to advocate for her province, and that's fine. But what I am saying, and I'm not sure I can be any clearer about it, is her advocacy around the oil tanker ban puts at risk real projects with private sector proponents that have all their approvals in place, that are approaching but have not yet reached final investment decision, because it jeopardizes the coalition of support and tolerance that we built for these projects in British Columbia. Now, I am not doing, I'm not having secret meetings with Ottawa about Alberta and Saskatchewan. I want to work with Alberta on electrical intertie, on the TMX pipeline. I want to work with Scott Moe on Nutrien and potash and keeping that product in Canada so it doesn't get tariffed by Donald Trump on the way out of Washington State. But man, it makes it hard to do that when I'm subject to a PR exercise out of Alberta for a project that doesn't exist.
You just can't make this stuff up. Like, it's just so crazy, the hypocrisy of this guy. Absolutely, like, just wild. So, anyways, yeah, what do you guys think? Do you think Alberta should get a bunch of pipelines going through? I think so. Comment down below if you like. But yeah, David Eby, he's got to be ejected, because like you can't create like a sustainable economy anymore just by hopes and dreams and rainbows. And this guy does not care about the rest of the province. Like, the funny thing is, like, he just realized, like, they had built C5 as an example, which means that they're going to push any project which they want to, as long as it has like Canadians' federal interests at heart, right? And so whatever he's saying is irrelevant. If the federal government wants to build a pipeline, then it's going to go through. That's just no matter what. He has no choice. He can't do anything about it. He has to back up the federal government with that. But anyways, guys, hopefully you like that one. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share with your friends as well. And I'll see you guys on the next one. It's going to be a lot of fun. I don't know. We're going to see what happens with this. I'm sure it's going to get more interesting as the week unfolds.